Well, of course, the top search term this weekend was Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones. And most of that focused on the issue of Sandy Hook. Did something really happen there? I think what they're really concerned about is the fact that we shut down their push for gun control. But let's talk about false flags for a moment. I mentioned a few weeks ago, I asked people to give me various names for the different types of false flags, because not every false flag is completely done by actors. There's different types of false flags. We had the kinds of false flags that we had to start the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. We had the false flag that was used to start World War II. We've had a lot of different types of false flags. One of the ones that came back was from a person on Twitter, Londarosa, and I thought they had some good ideas. One of them was an opportunistic false flag. I think that's a good way to put it. When there's a real event, and then the government seizes that as an opportunity to push forward their legislative agenda or their pet project. So we see that happen pretty frequently. Was that what happened at Sandy Hook? You know, I would think that parents at Sandy Hook, I would think that the parents of Seth Rich and others would want to know what really happened to their children. Wouldn't you? I certainly would. I would want to know where it went, regardless of who was involved. I mean, if somebody said that Ron Paul was involved in something where one of my children died, as improbable as that would be, I would still want that thoroughly investigated. And if the trail led to him, I would want him prosecuted. But many people don't want to go to particular places because of their political connections. But, you know, we have other types of false flags. We've got kind of passive false flags. I would say that when we look at the United Kingdom's London Bridge attack, I would call that a passive false flag. They bring these people in. They shoot documentaries about the jihadi next door. They allow them to be there. They ignore complaints about these people, hoping that they will do something that will allow them to increase their surveillance state, not to stop people coming in. So I would call that a passive false flag. Then we have kind of the, I would say the enhanced or even the directed false flags. And that would be something like we saw if it's exposed, I could say, well, we were just setting up a sting. We really weren't doing anything. But they start directing people, and then they pull back and they let it happen. Or maybe they see that the Japanese are moving in on Pearl Harbor, and they say, well, let's not really do anything. Let's kind of shut that down and shut that information down because I really want them to be able to attack Pearl Harbor. Maybe they didn't want it to go as far as it didn't think that it was going to be as big as it was, but they really wanted them to take the first strike so they could get into the war. So maybe we got the enhanced or the directed false flag, and then we got the whole cloth false flag, where everything about it is fake. So you can take a look at what's going on, but where we got into this, we had an investigator who really did want to know what had happened at Sandy Hook. Wolfgang Halbig was somebody who had law enforcement experience as well as being a principal. He became a consultant looking into these types of events. He had investigated these school shootings all over the place. And he would look at it and say, I would want to know, if I had a child in school, I would want to know what had happened at that school so it wouldn't happen at my school. And he would want to know that as well. All of us should want to know that. But the question is, why would they shut that down? Why would they shut down that investigation? Why would they threaten him in Florida as he's looking at it? Why would they come after that individual and threaten him? And they've never done that before. There's something to see there. But we push back against that. Even if it was just simply an opportunistic false flag, we shut down their effort for gun control, and they're very upset about that. Now we got J.P. Morgan saying they're going to pull all the ads from NBC News until after this interview with Alex Jones airs. J.P. Morgan, their namesake, was the guy who created chaos and crisis as a false flag in order to create the Federal Reserve, bringing people together in Jekyll Island as a solution to the thing that he had created. J.P. Morgan, the people who were involved in fraud, mortgage fraud, the people who paid $9 billion to shut down an investigation, they don't want you to know about Alex Jones. They don't want you to see our reports. I've had my report on It's a Wonderful Lie, showing how the creation of the Federal Reserve paralleled some of the events in It's a Wonderful Life. They both took place at Christmas time. They shut that down multiple times on YouTube, even though the clips that I used were fair use, even though I had taken them from the full movie that had been up and was watchable in the United States, as well as in other places. I said, well, you can't do this in the United States. They reasserted that they had a copyright here in the United States. They took that down multiple times. We kept having people repost it, and they would take it down. And we fought with them for several months before we finally got it up there. They don't want you to know the origin of the Federal Reserve. They don't want you to know that the owner of Chobani, a Turkish citizen, is sitting on the private Federal Reserve Board. So JP Morgan, who normally sponsors NBC, Operation Mockingbird, they even got a peacock there. Actually, they're a parrot of what the government wants them to put out. They don't want you to see Alex Jones. They don't want you to understand how the bankers are deceiving us. And here's an example of this. Going back to 2014, Matt Taibbi, Rolling Stone magazine, he does a great job of exposing these crooked banks like HSBC and JP Morgan. Back in 2014, the title of the article was The $9 Billion Witness, Meet JP Morgan Chase's Worst Nightmare. This is a woman, Elaine Fleischman. She had 8 years of keeping a heavy secret. She said, it was like watching an old lady get mugged on the street. I thought, I can't sit by any longer. She was a central witness in one of the biggest cases of white-collar crime in American history, possessing secrets that J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon late last year paid $9 billion to keep the public from hearing. Back in 2006, as a deal manager at the gigantic bank, Fleischman, first witness, then tried to stop what she described as, quote, massive criminal securities fraud in JP Morgan's mortgage operations. Thanks to a confidentiality agreement, she said, she'd kept her mouth shut. Not even her closest family or her brother knew what was going on. She said, they'll find out when I do this interview. She was blocked at every turn by asleep-on-the-job regulators, or maybe people who had regulatory capture, who were supposed to be the regulators, but they loved the banks that they're regulating because they just have this wonderful relationship. Or like the Securities and Exchange Commission. She was blocked by a court system that allowed Chase to use its billions to bury her evidence. But they said the past year, in 2013, she watched as Eric Holder's Justice Department struck a series of historic settlement deals with Chase, Citigroup, and Bank of America, like they did with HSBC, where James Comey was. They took James Comey out of the bank that was given a sweetheart deal and put him in as FBI director, even after they'd convicted them multiple times for money laundering for drug cartels and terrorist organizations. But this case was essentially cash for secrecy, as Matt Taibbi points out. He said the banks paid big fines so that they wouldn't have trials, so that they wouldn't have judges, only secret negotiations that typically ended with the public shown nothing but vague, quasi-official papers called statements of fact, which were conveniently devoid of anything like actual facts. He said now, and that was in 2014, Eric Holder was about to leave office, and his Justice Department reportedly wrapped up its final settlements. The state is effectively putting the finishing touches on what will amount to a sweeping industry-wide effort to bury the facts of a whole generation of Wall Street corruption. Will NBC tell you that story? Will NBC talk about the crimes of HSBC, the crimes of JP Morgan? Will they talk about the origins of the Federal Reserve? No, they won't. And that's why JP Morgan doesn't want you to see the Alex Jones interview. And that's why they're going to pull their corporate sponsorship until after it airs.
Electrify your day with Secret 12. It's like lightning in a bottle. We all have days in which we just can't seem to perform at the level we'd like to. InfoWars Live Secret 12 is designed to naturally energize your body and mind with 2 great tasting and super high quality forms of vitamin B12. Proper vitamin and nutrient intake is essential to keep your body functioning at optimum levels. The reality is, it's hard to take in the proper amount of vitamins we need each day with our modern diets. Secret 12 by InfoWars Live is an easy way to naturally upgrade your vitamin B12 intake and support your body's natural systems. It pairs 2 forms of vitamin B12 into one explosive formula. Vitamin B12 supports healthy energy levels through red blood cell formation and aiding in the body's natural processes, but it also assists with many other functions of the body. Electrify your mind and body and take your health to the next level. Experience the power of Secret 12 at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.